Well, I sure hope everybody had a great week. And I hope you guys are getting ready for the Thanksgiving break. I am working through grading everything. By this weekend, I should have everything up to date. You'll notice that I kind of messed up on due dates for things. We, it's basically things are just kind of um, up in the air a little bit. So don't worry about them too much, and use the next 2 weeks to do the best you can. This module is pretty easy to deal with, but use the next 2 weeks to get caught up in things and make sure everything is up to date. When you see that you've gotten lower points than you expected, read my comments in the comment section about the grade and follow through. One thing that you will notice is that Canvas, if you submit something, if you say, for example, you submit 3 out of 4 things and then you go back the next day and submit the 4th thing, what Canvas will do is erase everything else that you submitted. So for many people, when you're supposed to submit 4 or 5 images, they'll submit all of them except for one that they've forgotten, and then go back and resubmit with just that one, and Canvas will reset itself so that I can't see any of the rest of the assignment. So if that's the case, and I've made a note about it, just resubmit all the images all at once that go with that, and then I should be able to see everything at once. I wanted to talk briefly about how to improve your score. And there's some easy things to do, and there's some things to do that people just forget about. And I'll talk about specifically assignments for one thing. One is what I just mentioned about submitting. Make sure that if you have 3 pictures that you need to submit, or 4 or whatever it is, submit them all in the same session. You can put in multiple files at the same time and then submit, and that's what I would do. Don't go back and resubmit an additional file unless you're going to resubmit all the files. That is one big thing. So if you're missing something, look at what I've written down. Another couple things are, it is really easy to, if you have missed one of the attendance videos, just go back, turn that on and listen to it while you are working on your projects. That is an easy way to increase your score. Another thing that you can do easily is go back through the quizzes and look at all your quiz scores. All the grading on the quizzes is automatic. I don't have anything to do with that. But if you are missing a couple points, you can always retake the quiz. I have that set so that all the quizzes you can retake 70 times if you want to, which I think would be super boring, but you can take the quiz at least 2 or 3 times until you get a perfect score. That's no problem at all for me. So that's another way of increasing points. Turning things in again after you follow directions. For example, if you're missing, several people have done this, where if the assignment calls for 4 or 5 images and you only sent in a couple of them, people have resubmitted with all the images at once, and that increases the score because I'll go back, regrade it, and fix it. Sometimes going back in assignments, and if you haven't gotten all the points you want, you see, look at my comments, because I will always explain why you've gotten less than an A on an assignment. So look at that and then follow those. And if you don't understand the comments, let me know so I can clarify it. So all those are really easy ways of fixing grades. And then another thing is go through your list of assignments and make sure that everything that is due you've been able to turn in. Sometimes we get caught up with what we're doing, and even though we may have done the assignment, we forget to turn it in. I had one student a couple of years ago who was dealing with a lot of issues at home. He was getting the assignments done, but he just was forgetting to turn them in. And he was getting a D. And I asked him, just go through, and he asked me what he could do to get his score up. And I said, go through and check and see what you haven't turned in. And that's when he realized that he hadn't turned in a lot of stuff. And I think within a week, his score went from a D to an A minus because he found everything they needed to and turned it all in. Another simple issue that some people might have, if you get a 0 points on something, make sure that you turn the right assignment in to the right work into the correct assignment. I think one point of confusion can be the kente cloth and Africa reflection. Sometimes people will just turn the kente cloth reflection into the Africa assignment, and that's a really bad idea because the Africa assignment deals with the entire module, and the kente cloth reflection is only about that one article I send everybody about kente cloth that's in that module. Another thing I've noticed is that occasionally it looks like people will plug in parameters for ChatGPT to write the reflection. And on one hand, it's really important to know how to use ChatGPT properly. And it's a really good opportunity to use that for your rough draft for those assignments, but do not turn in what ChatGPT gives you, because I can tell sometimes when the language is off, because ChatGPT needs to be able to read enough of your language to be able to mimic you appropriately. But also when I'm asking for a reflection, I'm asking about your thoughts, not a regurgitation of material. If you need ChatGPT to give you a template to follow, that is perfectly fine. But before you turn it in, rewrite it in your own voice. That is really important because ChatGPT is a statistical analysis program. It's not its own intelligence yet. And when something is asking for an opinion, it's not going to be able to, it's not confident enough to give its own opinion yet. So a reflection is supposed to be your thoughts about something. Go ahead and use the ChatGPT to give you an outline or a rough draft, and then rewrite it in your own verbiage, so it reads like you have written it yourself. Because if you write it in your own language, you will have written it yourself. You're just using ChatGPT to give you the outline. And that's really important. Now, there have been times too when I am working on an assignment and working on grading, and I get caught up in the grading thing, and I have actually graded a couple assignments really, really badly because I forgot that I had gone to a different assignment. And thankfully, those students that I've done that to have pointed it out to me and been nice about it. So I appreciate that. That is another thing to look for. Look through all your assignments, and if you've gotten less than an A on something, look at the notes that I've made. And sometimes I'll be wrong. If, for example, I require the accessed on phrase at the end of every citation that you access through the internet. If you actually went to an actual physical library and checked out an actual physical book, you're not going to need an accessed on date because it's a physical book. And a couple of people, when I asked for the accessed on thing, they said, well, these were physical books. And I don't need that, and I didn't think I need that date. And they were right, of course, and they got the points. So consider that. And when you do your annotated bibliography, it is absolutely vital that you follow these three principles. The first one is follow MLA standard citation format for each citation. Add the accessed on phrase that we talked about and is in your assignment descriptions at the end of each citation. So it'll be the citation, you'll end your citation with a period, and then you'll write accessed on and give the date. Use the same date format for all of your accessed on phrases in whatever you're doing. And then the third thing is make sure that all your citations are organized alphabetically by the first letter in each citation, just as it is organized with the MLA. And usually that is going to be the first letter of the article name, if that is the first thing that comes in if that is the first thing that the MLA citation calls for. It is maybe the first name of the first letter of the last name of an author, or it could be the first letter of a company name. If you find something online and the article author is listed as Tate Gallery, for example, instead of writing gallery, Tate, it is not a person's name, it is a company name. So you write the full company name, which would be Tate Gallery, and you use that T to help you when you're alphabetizing. Right? So those three things are the biggest problem for people missing a couple points on the annotated bibliography. And most of the stuff that I've been seeing, people are doing really well. And I very much appreciate that. I think it's terrific. All right, now for this week's lesson, or this week's module, we're going to be talking about careers in the arts. And I do not have a standard career in the arts. There are lots of things that can be done, and I've kind of made my own way. When we think about professional artists, a lot of the times we're thinking about somebody like Del Parsons here on campus, who is one of the very best Jesus painters. And he has galleries that he works with, that he does paintings for, so that they can sell them in the galleries. But he and his wife have also set up other opportunities too, where he will sell prints of his work, and he does consulting and advising too. So he does a lot of different things, and that is pretty much how a lot of really successful artists will do their things. And I'll talk about it more a little bit after we go through this. Actually, no, I want to stop and tell you what I do, and then I'll go through the module. What I do is I have sold stuff occasionally in galleries, but most of what I do is on a consultation and direct consult with the customer and commission work basis, which means that in my stained glass work, the LDS Church will send me to a country to assess earthquake damage, and they'll consult with me on a project for replacing unique windows. A couple of weeks ago, I went to Monticello because they had a couple windows failing there that they need replaced, and I'm the only one apparently who can figure out exactly the techniques that the original artist used and how to mimic them, so we can actually replace those windows. It's a specialty cast process, it's a specialty paint process, and it's a lot more expensive to replace two windows than it would be to build a bunch of new ones because of the specialty processes that are involved. I've also gone overseas to train other studios how to make stained glass windows so they look exactly the same as what other studios are doing. One of my jobs in that consulting umbrella is I work with designers on their projects so that we can actually build what they envision with stained glass and make it so that it's structurally sound. I have an engineering background, and so some of the work that I do requires me to be aware of different things like how the weight of material will be supported by the material, how it will sustain itself, how to change designs so that they're strong enough, how to make sure that the windows aren't too big or too small to work with. And so I do that kind of consulting as well. Another thing that I do with the stained glass studio that I work with is I figure out how to solve problems, how to fix things. I've curated for museums. Curation involves laying out art pieces for an exhibit, but also involves finding the best way to preserve something so that historically it will stand the test of time. And I know how to do that with stained glass. And so I I've worked with BYU Art Museum, and I've worked with the LDS Church Art Museum as well to make sure that those things that they have, the historical windows, are sustainable and will last for quite a long while to come. At my job, I also will design. I'll work with specific customers and help them develop an idea for a stained glass window that they want. Then I will design the window, and I will sometimes I will prepare it so that it can be taken to a water jet cutter so that they can cut out the glass. That means I have to use AutoCAD, and I'll take my pencil drawing of a window design and put it into AutoCAD so that another company can cut the glass out with a machine. And I'll design windows at different complexity levels, knowing depending on how complex a customer wants, what their price range is, as well as knowing the available people that are ready to build the window, what their skill set is, what their skill level is. And I can design windows to reflect that. And the customer, all they're seeing when I get all done is that it's a beautiful window and they're happy with it. Some of the other things I'll do is sometimes when I design a window for a customer, I get really excited about it, and I'll build it as well. And I can build the windows so that they're dimensional, so that they're engineered correctly, so that they're strong enough, depending on the application. I know what to do about windows if they go into doors or if they go into walls. What to do to make sure that they're safe if it's going to be in a high traffic area. I know how to, and so I do all that as well. In addition to that, on my own work, I make glass sculptures, and I consult and I talk with people about art and different things like that. I am a writer, and so I will write magazine articles for online magazines about things like stained glass and intersectionality and how it impacts the religious and art spheres. I do a lot of work. Several years ago, I was interested in interfaith and pluralist work. And so I started learning about symbols that other artists use who belong to other faiths. And that got me interested in becoming a chaplain. So I'm also a pluralist chaplain. And I will volunteer work with individuals to help them to find their own place in the spiritual realm and what they want to do spiritually as individuals. And in addition to that, I also find opportunities to use art and humanities to bring people and communities together through finding commonalities of art and appreciation and things like that. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Salt Lake, and while I was there, one of my jobs, or the primary reason I was there, was to interview on stage in front of an auditorium full of people, interview an individual who is the head curator of a national Jewish museum. He's a writer and an academic, and he writes about the good things he appreciates about imams who are Muslim. So he's Jewish, and he writes about Muslims, and he also is a volunteer for a Muslim organization in the Washington, D.C. area while he's Jewish. And so that was really interesting. We were able to talk about things like art and humanities and symbolism from different faith traditions. In addition to all that artsy stuff, I also write grants for different humanitarian organizations. And in my own stuff, I do watercolor and stained glass sculpture. So I have several books published, and I'm working on several others. I put together exhibits. So the point is that I do an awful lot of different kinds of things. It is very rare that an artist type person can really do everything that they want with just one job. Most of the artists that I know who are even represented in galleries and are represented really well also have several other jobs that they do. In addition to all those other things, I teach. I'm an adjunct teacher at couple different universities, and I do workshops. So I do an awful lot of different things. And sometimes it isn't all about what you do to make money. My grant writing I do as a volunteer work. My chaplaincy I do as volunteer work. And so there are other things that I do like that, volunteer. But because of my background in arts and the way that an art background helps you to see the things around you and helps you to interact with people, that has really expanded network of opportunities for different interesting things that I can do. That's how I went to Iran. That's how I went to China. That's how I went to Chile, South America. But it's different fun things like that. We're going to be talking about a list of careers associated with the arts. I've told you the different kinds of things that I do, and I don't know if all these categories are, or all the things that I mentioned fit into the categories of this module, but we'll see. One of the things that is really wonderful, okay, working as a professional artist can seem scary and can seem hard to get into. But one of the things that is absolutely wonderful is when we use things like social media as a tool to engage with an audience, engage particularly with an audience who want to collect our work or interact with us professionally, and use that as a way of getting the word out. Is basically advertising for our brand. And your brand is what makes you a unique artist and what lets everybody know that whatever it is that they're seeing that you made is made specifically by you. The first job category is illustration. Illustration is something where it's a specifically, how can I say this, specifically focused art field. Because as an illustrator, you have to be able to clearly define the thing that you are showing and communicate that specifically, immediately to your audience. Now, what makes this difficult sometimes is that if an artist is all about engaging the person in an intellectual conversation somewhere, and by that I don't mean you are talking to a viewer directly, but you put so many layers of information and thought into your work that somebody can keep going back to it, and that the image changes for them every time that they change. That kind of ongoing process for an artist can make it difficult for them to go in becoming an illustrator. But I also know a person who is fantastic at building layers of complexity into their work, who is one of the leading biomedical illustrators in the country. Somebody needs something specific, you need to be able to communicate with them directly and succinctly, so you know exactly what it is they're looking for, and then produce it so that it meets their need. I think some of the challenges, this is an exceptional field to get into, and with a lot of people putting books up on Amazon, it's one of the fastest growing marketplaces in the world. You can, through a platform like Fiverr, or when you build your network out on another social media platform, you can produce offerings like this for people. People have also done this on Etsy and have become very successful with Etsy. Some of the pitfalls are, if you don't limit what your customer can change, then, like for example, you'll see on Fiverr or Etsy something like, this price includes 2 free revisions. Anything beyond that is extra. You have to do that sometimes, because if the customer gets the idea that you are happy at no extra charge to keep changing all the little nibbly details that they want you to, that's going to do a couple things. One is that's going to make it so that the customer devalues your work immensely, because suddenly your time does not mean anything if you're going to do all this other stuff for free. But what that also does is it prevents the customer from specifically analyzing what they want and communicating that to you. If they think that your work is so easy that you can make whatever change they want anytime they want and you'll do it immediately, then there's no real reason for them to make up their mind and communicate to you exactly what they want. So those two things, I think, are something to really think about. If you're going to go into illustration and you want to make sure that that is a career for you and you want to use one of those social media platforms or a path like Etsy or Fiverr to get work to do this, make sure that you put in there limitations on your customer. And it's not to make it so that you're a jerk and they don't get what they want. You're also making a contract so they know specifically what you're going to do, and it enforces the idea that they need to communicate with you clearly. And that's a big part of what becoming a successful illustrator is, being able to communicate with your customer and having them communicate with you. Now, another category is fine art. And we have a lot of really exceptional talent here on campus to do this. Sometimes fine art will be the gallery route. That's what people think of all the time first, where you're producing things and you bring them to a gallery and then the gallery sells them for you. And this can be anything from painting like this to drawings to collages. I've seen that, fabric art and sculpture. So pottery, clay, ceramics, all that kind of stuff as well, tiles. I know of a couple people who work in ceramics and they specifically make custom tiles for people. And they do a lot of gallery work with their tiles. Now, this opens the door for a number of different things, doing it being in a gallery. You can, if you get enough commissions and you get your own independent fan base, you can do this on your own without having to go to a gallery. One of the nice things about working with galleries is that they will open doors for you that would never be open otherwise because of their connections. And they handle a lot of the irritating work for you. A lot of the irritating busy work. You don't have to deal with customers like you do with the most illustration type jobs if you're working with a gallery. The downfall is, though, you need to go do the legwork yourself to find a gallery who has a base of customers who are interested in works that you produce. And you also have to make sure that your works, when you're done, are professional and they're gallery ready is what it means. Like they can hang on the wall and they're ready to sell. Commissions are going to be anywhere from 30 to 50%. That means whatever the painting sells for or whatever the sculpture sells for, 30 to 50% goes to the gallery because they are doing all that for you. They are bringing people in to look at your works. They're promoting your works. They're doing advertising and all that for you. Now, if you choose to, and I know people that will make a good living just with the fan bases that they develop through social media, and you can do that, and that's great too. Fine art isn't limited to just one-of-a-kind things. Like I said, Dale Parson, he and his wife work with print companies. So they will do fine art limited edition prints that collectors would love to get. A lot of the times what is attractive to collectors is it's less expensive than an original full-size image. And what that means for them is they can get more of the art that they love because it's a little bit less. And it's limited, which means there's not a lot of people in the world that have it. Out of 8 billion people on the planet, maybe only 20 have that image that you have as a print. Sometimes fine art painters will also do commission work and freelance work. Commission work and freelance, you've got to be in the same mindset of controlling and contracting the interaction you have directly with your customer. And all these things you should have contracts in place to protect both yourself and the other parties involved. But for commissions and freelance, you need to make sure that by the time you produce the work that somebody has commissioned from you or that they have paid you to do, it is exactly what the customer wants or better. This is not an opportunity to take a lot of artistic license, but you need to be able to make sure that you understand what the customer is looking for and that they know what to expect. And so with a painting, if it's on a commission basis, I would not even start the painting until the customer who's commissioned it uh, has given you the go-ahead to make what you want because they trust you, or to make what they are expecting because they trust you. Now, if you want to do something where, and I've done this before, where I've interacted with customers and they've kind of helped me as I build the window, if you do that, you charge extra. Don't necessarily tell them you're charging extra, but I would recommend highly, if you're going to allow somebody who's commissioned to work from you to come in and ask you to change things as you're building it, you need to charge extra. I highly recommend that. Freelance, sometimes, and with freelance, sometimes people will say, well, we like your work, we like this style, can you build this 7 things that look kind of like this? And then you do that. An example of commission work is if you go to Arrowhead Gallery, you will see that there are several artists that say, I'm happy to paint a portrait of you and your family. And talk to me about price and things. And that's when they are looking for a commission, or when a customer is looking for a commission. Freelance is like if you go down this road that is just to the north of the North Commons building, you will see over by the cemetery, there is a white building that is a realty company, and they had commissioned a freelance mural painter to come and paint her fine art mural on the wall, on the exterior walls. And that's a good example of that. So there's lots of different kinds of things there too. But in these kinds of things, if you're going to be doing working with a gallery, you'll need to bring gallery ready art to them so that they can sell it. If you're doing freelance or commission, you need to make sure that when you have the customer pay up front, I usually have people pay half up front, and then that allows me to get my materials together, and that also demonstrates that they are serious about following through. Now, ceramics, this is kind of a cool one because ceramics, people will do stuff for galleries, like I mentioned, but they also will do things for festivals, art festivals. There's thousands of art festivals around the country, and I know a couple people who are ceramicists who that's how they make their living. They have found the right festivals where there are fans of their work that are there, and they will sell out consistently all the stuff that they make, and that is their bread and butter. They really hit hard by COVID because they couldn't go to these festivals. A lot of them were shut down, but they sell their ceramics at the festivals, and they've also developed a network of people that love their stuff so much that they will sell on online stores and through social media. Now, sometimes if you have an engineering background and you're also a ceramicist, you can do other things that are really important. That's how, believe it or not, that's how toilets and sinks are designed. And new sink spaces, new countertop styles are designed all the time by ceramicists working with designers. Specialty engineering projects for things like electrical engineering, space engineering, aeronautic engineering, all that kind of stuff. They will need ceramic consultants too for different things, for different plane parts, for spaceship parts, for which is important. Now that we have a U.S. Space Force, there's going to be a little bit more of an opening for people to do ceramics for the Space Force. That's how spacecraft that re-enter into Earth's atmosphere, that's how the occupants are protected, is because of ceramics on the exterior, believe it or not. Graphic design is an excellent one, so there's lots of different opportunities for that. Graphic design is an excellent one. There's a lot of people that need graphic designers, and there are studios all over the place, design firms that need graphic designers. There's printing companies that need on-staff graphic designers. Sometimes a job as a graphic designer may look like you are a full-time professional at a printing company, like Steamroller Prints, for example, and they hire you specifically so that whenever a customer comes in who needs graphic design work, you're there to help. But it could also be that you work on social media platforms or like Fiverr or Etsy, and you do graphic design uh, for customers, and it's commission or freelance customer graphic design. You could also have online stores where you have designed clothing lines or utensil lines or mug, lines of wearable art, for example, and you use your graphic design sensibility to help that. So there's lots of different kinds of stuff right there too. You can also help people redesign their branding, for example. You can work for a design firm. You can work with an art product developing company or as an art director and use your graphic design to inform how the company brands itself and how the company designs its own products. There's lots of good stuff there. Most often, most of the graphic designers I know do freelance and commission work. And then the next most often I've seen is when people work with online and social media platforms. And again, if you're going to do anything custom, make sure that everybody involved knows exactly what they're getting into. I used to do designs on spec, which means speculation, hoping that the customer wants me to do their windows. And after getting those designs um, taken to somebody else to do the work, I stopped doing that. If somebody wants to design for me, they have to pay for it most of the time. If they, unless I know that they're serious and they bought from me before, then I'll do the designs for them. As a photographer, there's a lot of different things that you can do. The first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind as a professional photographer is wedding photography. And that is just one thing. Some of the other things that you could do is there are digital print techniques now where you can take and do digital prints of your beautiful photography and sell it either online or at galleries. You can also do really interesting photography and then get commissions for your work when you resell the rights on different image platforms. There's a number of different image platforms that you can go in and put your photos online, and people will come, and instead of paying $1,000 or $500 for one image, they will pay 10 or 50 bucks to be able to have the rights to use your image the way that they want to. And what that means is if you can only sell one image for $500 and one unique image, you put it online on these kinds of platforms. If you put yourself online, put your image online in 5 or 6 different platforms, and every month a few people are buying your image to use the rights to use your image. They're not buying your image outright. They're buying the rights to use your image in their own advertising campaign or whatever. When that happens, you could be making, if you make $2 or $10 for each image, and across those 6 platforms, 4 or 5 people buy that every month, then every month you're making anywhere from $60 to $300 because you're selling the rights to use that image. As a photographer, you can also do limited edition prints where you run a print, maybe a hand developed run of prints from a negative, and then also do digital print from it or whatever. There's lots of different kinds of things. There's lots of different levels of rarity that you can build into your product as a photographer. For example, this photo here, the original for the photo is several $1,000s. The rights to use it cost several $1,000s for major firms, but you can also get you can also get use rights for cropped versions of this, or the secondary stills where maybe the person took a sequence of 4 or 5 images. This is the famous one and they have a couple on either side of it that aren't quite as good, and they can sell those as um, limited use reproduction, and you could do that too. There's lots of different layers. And here is a short video to get to. Let's see, I'm going to pull it up, and let's see. It might not show up in the video for the whole class, but we're going to try it anyway. Okay, so I'm going to open this up and we'll watch it really quick. Actually, this is 17 minutes long, so I guess we won't watch it. But this individual talks about several different careers, possible careers in the arts. So that is definitely a very good one to watch. So make sure you do that. Now, a couple of the other ones that aren't in here is animation and game design. Here on campus is an excellent animation and game design department. I studied animation. I did old school frame by frame animation, but there's a lot of really great opportunities for animation and game design that are coming up. And if that's a career that you want to get into, that is definitely a field to get into. Animation isn't always a full-blown cartoon for Netflix, a cartoon series, but you could get a job in animate. You could become an animator and then get a job working on movies, doing special effects, or cleaning up old movies, restoring them. There's a lot of AI work that has helped with restoring old movies, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done by hand. And as an animator, you would have the background and qualifications to do that as well. With game design, there's so many different little games for apps, all the way up to full-blown immersive reality games. And you could do all sorts of different kinds of stuff as an animator. You could also be a person who does animated titles for movies or for videos for companies, for learning videos, different things like that. So there's lots of different kinds of stuff with animation. Some of the movies that I really enjoy are science fiction movies, and one of them is I, Robot. It was a Will Smith movie several years ago. There was an animator that worked on that, and he animated the robot's skin, but it was so accurate to the material that was being portrayed that Dow Corning, it's a major chemical company, hired him to do the research and processing for new polymers that they were developing and show potential clients and show the engineers working on these polymers what they would look like and how they would respond. So there's all sorts of different stuff. Now here is the quiz for this, and I want you to go through what we just talked about, read that again, and then take the quiz. And it would even be good to open up two different windows on your computer where you have this in one window, the quiz in one window that you're taking, and in the other window you have what we were just looking at. One of the challenges of fine artists is that a lot of the times we are our own bosses. That means that we have to find different ways of making sure we have enough income that we can depend on a steady income. And that can be different. That can be difficult and challenging. So definitely this quiz is pretty straightforward, and I don't think you'll have a hard time with it at all, especially if you want to do it open book like I just suggested. Now this is a little bit different assignment, the studio art assignment. It involves accessing a web address and finding out different stuff, and then submitting your material online. The first step of this is, and we'll talk about exactly what you need to turn in. What you need to turn in are these four things here. not all the rest of this. All the rest of this describes what those 4 things are. So we'll get down to that. So the first step on this will be you need to pick 3 artists. In addition to the artists that you're researching, these 3 artists must be living outside the United States, must still be alive as far as you can tell, and must be working in painting or drawing or sculpture. And they can do other things as well, but they have to be doing at least one of those 3 things, painting or drawing or sculpture. So for this, there's a couple different ways that you can do this. Pick a country and look for contemporary artists working in those 3 things is the easiest way. And maybe your family comes from the Ukraine, maybe your family comes from Iran, maybe your family comes from Korea. One of the easiest ways to do this is use a couple different search engines. And for Google, there's an example: contemporary artists in Iran, contemporary artists in Seoul. You could find artists like that. I find it a little bit more difficult to do this kind of search with Instagram or other social media. Sometimes you can. Facebook has a pretty effective search engine, but I would recommend doing a couple different searches on a couple different search engines. Even YouTube might be interesting. You might be able to find a contemporary artist working in the country of Uganda on YouTube that demonstrates, that has videos of their live action art building. That'd be kind of interesting. Victor Ekpuk is an artist that I found doing this, and he's now one of my favorite artists. His name is Victor, Victor, Ekpuk, Ekpuk. An excellent artist from the continent of Africa. Now, if you do have an account on Instagram, you can go ahead and use that. If you don't, just use another search engine, not a big deal. Instagram and Google are just examples. There are several. Bing is a good search engine. I prefer DuckDuckGo. I really like that. And there are several others too. If you're going to be doing it on Instagram, you'll need to be searching with hashtags. I'm not really into that. That's for you younger people. I would, look at phrases like this: contemporary artists in Seoul, in Korea, in China, in whatever the country or city you want to, in Java, in Indonesia, in Australia, in Sydney. There's so many different kinds of things that you can do. But what you need to do is they need to live outside the United States. Contemporary means that they are producing work right now, and you need to verify that they are alive today. And they need to be working as a painter, a drafter, or a sculptor. You need to do painting, drawing, or sculpture. So those are the 3 considerations. And spend about 15, 20, 30 minutes doing these kinds of, this kind of a search. All right. Make sure that when you do the search, you keep those 3 things in mind. The person is outside the country, they're still alive, and they're a painter, sculptor, or drafter. Drawing, they do drawings. So one of those 3 things. Now this does not have a link here. I don't know why I'll see if I can fix that as soon as we're off the call. I'm just going to copy it. I'm opening up a website. This is what the website looks like as you follow this. And I'm going back and I'm just going to show this tab. Now I'm going to copy the password. And then I'm going to go back to that other one. I'm going to paste the password in and submit. And this is what shows up. I hope everybody can see this. It says Wide World of Art. And it shows the students that have taken this class with Brian and me, and it shows all the different places in the world that students have looked at. And one thing you may want to do is look at this, and maybe nobody's done anything in Greenland. So maybe you want to find an artist in Greenland right here. Well, I guess somebody has. Maybe nobody's done one in Yukon in Canada. Find a contemporary artist in Yukon. Maybe nobody's found an artist in Western Australia or on the island of Fiji or in New Guinea, Papua New Guinea. There's a couple artists that are sculptors in Papua New Guinea that work specifically with wood planks, and they sculpt wood planks. That would be really interesting to do. So think about it, and then all of these countries, so looks like nobody has done anything with Mali or Algeria or, well, they have done with Madagascar, Morocco, Libya. So there's lots of different kind of countries, or Oman. I bet nobody's done anything with Oman. Doesn't look like it. So think about where you want to look for an artist too. But you open up this website, and then what you're going to do is pin them with their location. And after you have looked the artist up and written down some of their work, one of the things you're going to need to do is take a screenshot or collect an image of something that they've done. And on this Wide World of Art site, you're going to put down, you're going to find their location, you're going to put down their name, your name, an image of their work, and a short description of their work written by you. So for example, if the artist you pick is Slinkachu, and you pick The Last Resort, and you have it, and it looks like a little tennis ball with these little teeny tiny model of a person standing on a tennis ball with a plastic palm tree, then you would include an image of that and then a short description of that, which I just said. So those are the things you need to do, but you need to do that for each of those three artists that you found. All right. Now, after you've done that, so after you've filled that out and put your stuff here on the map, you know, wherever the three artists are, and you've done that for those three different artists, then you're going to come back and you are going to pick one of those three artists. One of those three artists, one of the three works from those artists, okay? So each artist has one image of work that they've done, and you're going to pick one of those to use for this. When you go back to Module 2, How to Think About Art, you're going to revisit the tools of artistic critique, describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. And then, with that one image that you've selected, you're going to go through and follow these steps. So that one image that you selected, you're going to write down the title and name of the artist, title of the work and name of the artist, title if you know it. You're going to look at that work closely for at least 5 minutes. And I would recommend putting on a timer. You're just going to look at it. You're going to then, after you look at it for 5 minutes, keep in mind those 4 steps: describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. And just do that mentally as you look at this for 5 minutes. Describe it to yourself. How do they then analyze it? Try to figure out how they made it. And then interpret what is it? Try to guess what it means. And evaluate, decide whether or not you like it and if it's worthwhile and if that's the job that it's supposed to do, which is essentially be art and be beautiful. After you're done with that for 5 minutes, find somebody and describe the artwork to them as if they are in front of you. And you can either do this to somebody where you talk to them directly, don't show them the artwork, you're just going to describe it to them, or you can call somebody on the phone and do this, or you can just pretend that somebody is standing in front of you and nobody has to actually be there. If you do that and you're just pretending somebody's there, I would recommend doing this where nobody's watching you, so you don't have to embarrass yourself. Then, as you do this, these are the steps that you're going to use. You're going to describe the artwork, You're going to analyze it and pretend that the person is in front of you. You're going to analyze the artwork. You're going to interpret it. Tell them specifically why these things mean, why you believe these different things mean specific things, why these passages or colors in the artwork are used. You're going to explain that to this person that is either imaginary or right in front of you or on the phone. And then you're going to evaluate and share whether or not you think it's successful. Do you think it's valuable? Do you think it's a worthwhile statement? Then after you've done that, after your discussion with either an imaginary friend or a real person, you're going to write 8 sentences. All right? 2 sentences describing, 2 sentences analyzing, 2 sentences interpreting, and 2 sentences evaluating. So you have 8 sentences. These need to be full sentences, and they need to be grammatically correct. And this assignment, like all your other assignments, needs to be typed. When you submit, you're going to include the following. Number 1, the countries of the 3 artists you submitted to the World Art Map. Number 2, the title of the work and the name of the artist for the one piece you are critiquing. Number 3, how long you looked at it. This is why I suggest a timer. If you looked at it for 5 minutes and 7 seconds, write that down. If you looked at it for 4 minutes and 37 seconds, go back and look at it for another 23 seconds so you have at least 5 minutes. It needs to be at least 5 minutes. All right? And give me the exact time. And 4, include your 8-sentence critique. So this will look like, say the 3 countries, the 3 artists that I found were in Ghana, Nepal, and Mexico. Then I would write the 3 artists that, and for number 1, I would do 1 dot, the 3 countries of the artists that I found are Nepal, Ghana, and Mexico. Then number 2, from maybe the one thing that I saw was a handmade saddle that was sculptural from Nepal, made in traditional Nepalese fashion by a contemporary artist whose name was Namadal. So I would write that, and maybe they titled this custom-made saddle that they did that's so beautiful, Flowing with the Wind. So I would write for number 2, the title of the work is Flowing with the Wind. The artist's name was Namadal, and it is maybe just a short description. It was a custom-made sculptural saddle. All right. Then number 3, I looked at this for 5 minutes and 33 seconds. Number 4, my 8-sentence critique. First 2 sentences describing. It is a saddle made in traditional Nepalese way. I did not know that the Nepalese rode on goats. This is designed specifically for goats. It's made out of leather, and there's a significant amount of hand tooling with lots of curlicues and fanciful designs that look like traditional type style of artwork. 2 sentences analyzing. It looks to me that they used traditional leatherworking tools, plus some other things, perhaps wetting the leather down and letting it dry in molds to get different shapes. And then 2 sentences interpreting. Maybe this interpretation is, it feels like they really treasure the animals that they ride. And this is made specifically for riding a goat, which means that they needed to do that for whatever reason. I didn't know that goats have saddles, or maybe goats are never ridden on, and this person is making a political comment. I don't know. I didn't understand that part. But what is fascinating to me is that there's a lot of energy put into the designs. So it means that they value both the craft and artistry of saddle making, as well as the animal that the saddle is for. And then evaluating. I think this is a beautiful example of traditional leatherwork. I had to do some research, and I found out that this fits right in with the historical saddle making in Nepal. And I think it's incredibly successful because it's obviously made by somebody who really understands leather, and it's going to stand the test of time. So this is basically what the assignment is. So it involves looking up stuff on the internet and writing it down. Now, this isn't due until December 10th. All right, so that gives you a couple weeks. This is for the next part of this, which is creating for the Mali Empire. And this is you did your brainstorming project about what to do. I want you to spend at least 2 weeks making this. I would start it just as soon as you can. Pull out your stuff that you did, getting ready for this, the different kinds of things that you wanted to look at, or the different kinds of things you wanted to examine. And let's see, use your critical thinking skills to develop. We're going to talk about this next week as well, because it's not due until December 10th. Use your critical thinking skills to develop your idea so that it looks like it belongs in the Mali Empire. Look at the different modules that I think it's number 3 and number 6 that we looked at when we learned about Sundiata and the Mali Empire. Look at those resources, examine them online, do your own research. And I want you to spend at least 2 hours researching what the Mali art is, what the art looked like, and get a sense for what the people did. And we're talking about the old Mali kingdom at the time of Sundiata, so about 700 years ago. We're not looking at contemporary stuff. Now, some things that might be surprising is that Mali, 700 years ago, the state religion had become Islam. They lived in a world, though, that was heavily informed by things like animism, shamanism, and natural magic. Animism is when your belief system acknowledges the idea that everything has some level of awareness and is its own object. Even though this is an ancient tradition, modern contemporary physics has something called the observation principle, where it seems that when you are aware of something, it responds. So there's something to that. But anyways, the world of old Mali was heavily informed by animism. Everything had an awareness. Shamanism is when it's based on the belief that there are people that can connect you with different layers of the universe. And there are usually 3 layers of the universe. There's a spiritual realm that's thought of as being above us. There's a physical realm that we live in. And then there's the underworld realm. And that's where our drives spring from. That's where our needs spring from. And that's usually where those who have died that don't go into the spiritual realm reside. So it's usually a little bit more shadowy place. But that was a very real part of the world. And then natural magic. This is based on resonance and symbolism, where if you wanted to bless somebody, you would make something that in your mind connects with that person. Like maybe their favorite color is blue, so you'd make a clay figure representing them out of blue. And then, since you want to bless them, you would lay symbols of blessings around this blue thing that represents the person. And this kind of idea, using natural materials and using natural things, is a very old way of looking at the world. And it's a way of delivering blessings to people through the symbols of the people. So this is what informed that world. And then Islam is all about education and science and treating women well. This is what actual Islam is. And so you can imagine that there was a lot of juxtaposition of different ideas. And that's going to, but all those 4 things are going to be reflected in different aspects of the arts. So think about that. And how do you think these people with these different views interacted with each other? And how do you think these different things conflicted or worked together? These different awarenesses. Put yourself in their shoes 700 years ago. What do you think that they really hoped for their children even? Now, if you are going to build something that did not exist in the old Mali Empire, which I hope everybody does, but should have, this is what I hope people do, is that maybe if cell phones didn't exist and they need one, what is a cell phone going to look like when it's made by the Mali 700 years ago? What would furniture look like? What bicycles? If you want to cook food, what would the food be like? All these things are what you need to do to think about for this project. Now there are five components that are really important to this. One is time and planning. You're going to need to spend 5 hours building this final project and 2 hours researching and planning. I would recommend use at least an hour to an hour and a half to research and a half an hour to an hour to plan. And with the planning, that's where you figure out, that's where you try different ideas on paper before you actually make it. And then spend at least 5 hours building. Now, if you spend less time than that, it will show up on your grade. If you spend more time than that, it will show up on your grade as well. The more time you spend on this, the better it will be all the time. The minimum that you need to do is 5 hours. Anything less than that, it will really not work out. I've had people say, well, it didn't take that long to build. Well, in that case, you aren't thinking about it in the proper way. This needs to look like it belonged to the Mali Empire. So for example, if you are planning and building a model refrigerator that they would use, think about what the materials would look like. And if you can cut it out and build it in just a couple hours and an hour or something, then do more to it. I would recommend applying it so it looked like it was made by materials that they had. You can use polymer clay or salt clay that you paint. You can use lots of different kinds of things. This is a significant project, so plan and use your time and resources carefully. Second, critical thinking. You will need to use your critical thinking skills to find visual links among the art we saw from the Mali Empire and that you found in your research, and apply those visual cues to your own work so it feels like it was made by those people 700 years ago living in the Mali Empire. Now, scope, plan this. Now, if you're going to say, well, it's only going to take me an hour to build it, then plan bigger, plan different, because you need to spend 5 hours building this. And if you are constructing models of furniture and each model only takes you a little while, then build a whole kitchen set of models, furniture. If each chair only takes you an hour to build 4 chairs and a table out of, as your scale model for a Mali kitchen. So think about that. Think about the time and how you're going to spend it. And also this, I want you to kind of control your researching, because you might find some stuff that's very interesting and just do more and more research. Try to pull back. When you get to about an hour and a half of research, look and start planning, and try not to lose yourself in the research, because this stuff can be interesting. You might catch a bug at how fascinating it is and just keep going. So be careful about that. So be aware of the scope. For creativity, I don't want to limit you to specific materials. Use materials that you have on hand that you can use. If you don't want to go to the store to get clay, don't go to the store and get clay. Look on the internet instead and find a recipe for paper mache clay that you can make with stuff that you already have at home. Think about that. I do not want this to cost an awful lot extra. I would like you to keep the cost of this down as much as you possibly can. So think about that. And there are YouTube recipes which require salt dough or paper mache for clay, and you can use those. Markers of paints are good if you already have them. You should already have paint from the other projects that you've done, and you can use those to color the clay so it looks like it's terracotta, for example. So be creative in your use of the materials that you already have at home. Now, workmanship, this is the final project, so you do your very best workmanship. Don't duct tape it together and call it good. Make sure that it is solidly constructed. It's not going to fall apart, so you can move it around and photograph it, but also make sure that it looks good. And if you get this done to the point where you want me to look at it and give you pointers, I will grade this as soon as I see it. So think about that. And what I mean by that is, if you're concerned about your workmanship and you want some hints, submit it. Tell me that you've done that, and I will go in and I'll look at it. I'll get pointers and say, okay, if you leave it like this is the points you're getting, but you can do these 3 things to it, and you'll get more points. All right, so consider that, and you will be graded on each of these 5 things: being time and planning, critical thinking, being aware of the scope, and your creativity. and then your workmanship. If at any point you have an issue about how to move forward, I will get back to you within 24 hours or sooner if I possibly can. Sometimes I'll get up at night and I'll respond to people then. Now, I will give you in this my cell phone as well, and you can text me and say, hey, I'm really worried about this. I emailed you and I haven't got a response back. I need it as soon as possible. I'm in your R1010 class. My name is so-and-so. Please text me back. Here's a photo of where I'm at right now, where the project is at. And my cell number for that is 801-367-4893. Now, when you submit, you're going to package this all up and submit everything at the same time. And in the submission package, you're going to include 2 views of what you've made. And I would recommend putting this all together in a Word doc and then saving it as a PDF so you submit the PDF. When you submit, include at least 2 views of what you've made and write the following. What is the title and what is the function? What is it? You know, the title, you can make up almost anything, but what is it that you've made? What are the materials that you've used? How long did you research for? What sources did you use? And these, if you want to just include the website links, that's fine. You don't have to record this in MLA format. Then, how long did your project take you to build? And so you include all of those things, and that's 3, 4, 5 different things to do. Put it into a PDF to submit. And if you want to do this, you know, like if your project you've decided to make as a short film, and nobody's done that yet, but you can do that. Or say, for example, you've decided you're going to cook your favorite meal, but you're going to cook it with material, with foodstuffs that was available to the people living in Mali 700 years ago. Maybe you want to do that and film it. That would be incredibly cool. And then you can, but then you submit it all in one document. Okay. Now again, you have until December 10th to do that, and that is 2.5 weeks. In addition to that project, I want you to be able to share your project. You don't have to talk about anybody else's work, but I want you to post. You don't have to post the whole thing, just post the photos. And if you want to tell somebody what it is, that's fine. But for the discussion board, all you've got to do is do that. This says 10 points, but I'm going to change that to 5 points. Because if you find out that it is just really awful getting ready for finals and you don't have time to do the discussion posting, I don't want you to feel like you're missing out on a lot. So I will edit that down to 10 points. I will edit it down to 5 points. Now, again, we will talk about this next week and talk about this project again. And I'm going to stop. Okay. So we have those 2 things. You have something that should be fairly short to do, which is learning about 3 different artists from 3 different countries around the world that are living today, and posting their name and image. And when I say short description, I'm talking maybe 5 to 8 words, just like you did for the artist research list of artists. It's just a very short description of the artwork. And so that is one part where you do that whole set of exercises. And then the other part is making your Milanese project. I wanted to share some of the things that people have done in the past. I have had people make a scale model of a water park. Somebody did crochet, but they used colors that they found were consistent with what people in the Mali Kingdom did. I'll give you an example of a bad one. Somebody made with magic markers on a piece of paper, they made a flag of Mali with a Mali an outline of the country of Mali. The problem is they did it as to what the flag is today and what the country is today. And so it didn't count as a project because this needs to be done as if it was in Mali 700 years ago. So if you're going to do a flag, you've got to do a flag that is going to be for the old Mali Empire. What would that look like? Do you have an idea of how big that is? How many countries, today's countries, are involved in the old Mali Empire? There's several of them. There's at least 8 or 9. So it was a pretty large area. And the flag is not going to look like flags do today. It's going to be very different. Well, think about that. So some of the other good projects are somebody wanted to make a table runner, and they started stitching on hand stitching on a white piece of fabric, and they realized that even if it was a thin table runner, it was going to be way too much for the time allotted. So what they did is started doing stripes down the center in colors that were consistent with Mali of 700 years ago. That turned out really well. One person decided to make a weight bench. He didn't really want to make a full weight bench from nothing. So what he did is he got his weight bench and he cut pieces of wood to put around the metal areas, and he drilled several different holes in the wood and made this weight bench so that it looked like it was made from chunks of wood, and it was upholstered with, it looked like hide, animal hide. So it looked like it was something that was made by what people had available to them, the resources available to them in Mali 700 years ago. One person made a bicycle, not a full-size bicycle, but a model that they sculpted out of clay to make it look like somebody, it was one of the same artists who had done one of those Gene horsemen, equestrians, riders that we saw. So it looked like the same kind of style and everything. That was pretty cool. And then several people have made jewelry, because they can make jewelry, and they've made pendants and rings. One person said that they were able to make the ring fairly quickly, so they actually made a couple of them to cover the 5 hours. Another person was a professional leather worker who took the class, and he made a Malinese messenger bag. So he made it in a style that was consistent with what he saw, things that he saw the riders were wearing in those Gene equestrian sculptures that we saw. He kind of guessed at what it would be designed like. And then he decorated it with designs that he saw in other examples of clay, and he carved those into the leather. And that turned out really beautiful. So there's a lot of different kinds of stuff. I've even had people make a model house that turned out well, complete with a jacuzzi in the back, and they did it all so that it was, it was only about this big or so, the whole thing, but they made it so that it looked like it was a scaled down version of something that you'd see 700 years ago in Mali. So really well done. Lots of different kinds of things that you can do. Be creative. Use your brainstorming. If you want to do something different that's in your brainstorming, if it's not going to work, get a hold of me, and I will talk to you right away, and we'll take care of it and make sure that we can sort it out so you know so you're confident in the direction that you want to go. All right. Those are the things that I wanted to cover this week. That's all I have to cover. There's nobody here to ask any questions, so I hope I've guessed at what questions might be and answered that. If you have any issues with following the directions or anything like that, try not to worry about too much. Most of this module is going to be done due not this coming weekend, but the weekend after. So think about that before you get stressed out. I would like you, if you can, go through the module quickly, read what you can before you get involved with the Thanksgiving festivities, just so it's in your subconscious. And then Sunday night, as you start preparing yourself, or over the weekend, as you start preparing yourself to come back to school, think about it a little bit, and then start working on it specifically on Monday. And it might also be, I don't know about you guys, but every once in a while at Thanksgiving, anytime that there's a holiday I spend with family, there's a time where it just gets too much for me. And I like having an excuse to tell people, I've got to get away. I've got to work on this project a little bit. I'm sorry, it's due on Monday. I don't know what else to do, and it's stressing me out. And I use that as an excuse to get out of the press of people, get away from everybody. So if you want to do that, that's just fine. And then you do some low-key research on your phone, finding out about artists in different countries or whatever. And that'd be totally fine. I do want to point out, though, that the research that you do for those three artists for that website, the Wide World of Art, is only for that particular assignment. The research that you count towards your Molly project can only be the research that you're doing on the Molly project. And it's finding more about the artwork that Molly produced, finding more about their materials usage, and different things like that. I just want to make sure that that's clear. Sometimes people get a little confused when they do their work logs. All right, well, that's everything that I need to cover today. I certainly hope that you guys have a really wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. It is one of my favorite holidays. It is a holiday that was one of the very few that was proposed by a woman during wartime. She proposed it to Abraham Lincoln during the middle of the Civil War, and he thought it was a great idea to have a time where everybody pauses to think about how grateful they are for the things that they do have that are worthwhile, and for the things that they've been able to overcome. I do think it's ironic that we have Black Friday when everybody gets into fight mode again, but for at least a couple hours, ideally everybody is in a grateful mood. And I look forward to seeing you guys next weekend. Be safe while you're traveling. This is a really bad time of year if you're not paying attention. So please be extra careful. Make sure you're safe. Do what you need to get the rest that you need so you're not too stressed, and make sure that you're healthy and that you stay healthy. All right? All right, folks. Thank you for joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday.